Hey there, Courtney here, and today we are going to go over posture number 3 in my book, which would be Cobbler pose or Baddha Konasana. And so I have a lot of props out here. I was practicing yoga with my friend Jean online in San Diego when it went out, so I thought, well, I'll just go ahead and teach this posture today. So if you are following along in the book, it's page 63 of The Mud and the Lotus, the book that I wrote that was released in 2017. And by the way, I have 2 books. I have one on workshops, retreats, and conferences, which I don't think any of us will be doing right now in March of 2020. But when things heal up and everyone has healed and is back to their normal life, I hope that we can have that time for community together. So today, Cobbler's pose. We are all probably fairly familiar with Cobbler's pose. The Sanskrit word is Baddha Konasana, which means bound angle, and it helps to open the hips. It aids in digestion, or I would say, I'm kind of getting away from the word opens the hips, just some hip flexibility and range of motion, and it helps to prepare women for childbirth as well as just helping with range of motion. It helps to balance chakras 1 and 2. And the verbal cues are, and I'm going to give a lot of modifications for this one because there are so many people who this is not accessible for, but we'll start with the basics. So you sit on your bottom, you place the soles of your feet together, and you can hold onto your ankles or your feet with your thumbs inside if you choose. You lift your seat back so that you're on your sit bones and sit tall. This is basic Cobbler. Taking a big breath in, lift up through the crown of the head. And exhale and begin to hinge at the hip joint. This is the hip joint. At the hip joint, leaning forward. Now, we can stop here. There's no need to go further forward. The directions for this posture in the book, and if you're learning to teach or practicing, what I would do is sit on the floor, read the verbal cue out loud as you do it yourself or teach it to someone else to learn. Before we go further into this, let's talk about the lines of energy. From the navel down to the floor, from the navel up to the crown of head, same as Sukhasana. Of course, when you move forward, that line goes out the crown of the head and back through the tailbone and down. So the push and pull goes on a bit of a different axis, or here, and then here, right? And also we have some movement out through the thighs. Now, this is a very challenging pose for many people. And so one thing I like to do here is place blocks under the knees. You can also use a bolster, blankets, anything you need here. I don't see this pose being practiced anymore. We talked about this in other videos, that we have really aren't seeing it as many seated postures anymore. Another way to do this is to... And I'm not reading right out of the book because I know this stuff, and if you will just read the book and follow along, you'll get the hang of it. You can sit on a bolster, a blanket. I use bed pillows at work because we are in a medical setting. We don't even have bolsters. So sitting here is much easier. And you know, when I was young, this was really easy for me, but now at 49, it's not as easy for me. And because of our SI joint in the back to the left and the right of the spine and the low back, what happens is if we're young and we start practicing yoga, we do this over and over and over and over, and we don't take care of our backs, or we hinge forward really deep, we can begin to cause some strain in the SI. And so it is I highly recommend modifying the pose even if it's easy for you, so you don't end up having some strain in your low back. Let's see. Have I forgotten anything? All right. Modifications. Place the feet further away from the body. Definitely use bolsters, use blocks, lift the seat. It may be helpful to sit on a blanket. We got that. Especially if you have low back pain. Like for me, when I go to yin classes, even though the teacher may not be teaching this with blocks, I'll slide them under there because I know my SI joint is going to hurt. Now, to counter that, after you do this posture, what I would recommend is something to this effect. So I'm leaning back, place the thighs together, and press some internal rotation will definitely help after externally rotating. Another thing that could help after doing this posture is, I don't have a lot of space here today. I got my ABC water there, my apple cider vinegar. So you can't see my face very well, but to take the foot towards the bottom, this helps with the SI, especially after doing things. So in your practice, if you're doing those external rotations, I would definitely do something taking the heel towards the bottom. You could do locust, there's so many different things. Okay, I digress. That is my specialty, digressing. Okay, assisting or adjusting. So I've been saying this when I was early on in my teaching 20 years ago. For probably the first 10, 15 years of teaching, I was very hands-on. And I personally love a hands-on teacher if he or she knows how to touch properly. I would prefer not to be touched if someone is not comfortable or familiar with touch. I am not opposed to touch. I am a hugger. I'm a very handsy person in a, appropriate way. But if you're not sure what to do, just don't do it. And so, but what you can do here is what my teacher would often do. And again, this is only in appropriate situations where you have permission to touch, is you take the hands, you can do it yourself, externally rotate the thighs backwards. You can hold on to the waist here. Thumbs are at the back. Big breath in. As you exhale, you just tipping the pelvis forward. So you could do that if you're working one-on-one with a student and they feel comfortable and they wanted to be helped. So imagine a teacher coming behind my back and just gently running the hand, almost barely touching down the spine or on the back, just not pushing, but letting me use my own body weight to come forward here, okay? So you always want to use light touch, just enough that you are a guide. My husband is a 9th degree black belt in Taekwondo, and touch is also a very big part of their teaching. So when he's teaching, he's going to go in and he's going to take his students and just tweak their movements and their forms to make them right. And that's also kind of how we are as yoga teachers, especially yoga teachers like myself who've been teaching in that world many years ago. We were taught that you must touch. It was you weren't seen as a quality yoga teacher if you didn't know how to do hands-on assist. It was a really, really big deal. And now in this new world of yoga for trauma and all the stuff that's come up and all the problems, people just aren't touching as much. So you have to learn to be very good at verbal cues. So let's talk about what else we can do here. You could, if this isn't enough and the person doesn't want to grab their feet, you can just put the hands on the thighs without pressing, or up even reduces the pressure more. They could even just lean forward here or here. So those are options as well. I always say this in my classes, yoga isn't supposed to be stressful. So we don't want the practice to be stressful. So I think we've got that except for the reclined version. But before we go there, let's talk about contraindications. We've discussed low back pain would be one. Knee pain, if someone's having knee pain, definitely blocks or bolsters under the knees. If there's groin or hernia pain in the groin or navel, definitely just be mindful, give them a different option. Another option to do is to have them do this posture reclined. So I'm going to move my water. I always recommend people keep some water with them when they practice. It's important to stay hydrated. So many health problems are from lack of hydration. So I have the blocks set up this way. I'm going to teeter the bolster here on it. Let me see if I can make this thing get bigger. It's not going to work, folks. Technology, I have not embraced it as I should. Soles of the feet together. Let's just go ahead and let's pretend I have blocks under each knee. I have more behind me, but I don't want to grab them. And we come back. Oh, this is lovely. This is so lovely. I had a restorative class for years where I used essential oils, and it was clear that it was essential oils and restorative. And for each posture, I would use a specific oil for that matched what the posture was for. And so this was one of the poses we did. I think I may have used a little chamomile or lavender in this one. But at any rate, here, just gently, you can gently press the thighs away. And I say gentle, palms up, and just relax. And this is just heaven on earth. Okay, so from Cobbler, how do you transition? Let's say you've done your Sukhasana. Maybe you've had them do some Dandasana, as we did earlier. And you've done Cobbler. Maybe you've done a series of twists and lateral leans, and you're ready to move on. And maybe you want to move to the standing positions. What I would highly recommend, and what I see is a real problem these days, is not taking time for transitions. It's just like people are like, I'm on my bottom and now I'm going to stand up. Well, that is energetically jarring. You know, we could be speaking in terms of chakras and koshas, but our body, the fluids in our body need time to adjust because they go with gravity. So the blood volume in my body right now is, the volume of blood is more so in my lower extremities, right? So I would come over and come to all fours, and I would recommend doing a few postures here in all fours, okay? So, you know, do your cat cows, do your puppy dog tails, do your sunbird. Can't do it, but let's imagine my foot went all the way back. You know, do a few different poses there, and then how are you going to transition? You're going to come up through down dog, squat, all fours, lunging. So you could come up through down dog, right? You could come up through Malasana, squat. You could come up, and my heels do not touch the floor. Some people will, some people won't. You could come up through a lunge, right? Take your time, do both sides. Always do both sides. Flex the foot, lift the knee, and come forward into standing forward fold. Alrighty, there are your transitions. Thank you for being with me through these different postures, and I hope to see you again.